Now I know what we're all thinking. How could Purple Black King, this bummy, terrible OP8 old leader, possibly survive in the OP15 meta? But this leader has gotten some pretty powerful new support cards in the 6 cost King and the 7 cost Kaido. And using some old support, actually like this 9 cost Kaido, helps it do pretty good into some meta relevant matchups. But let me cut right to the chase about this deck. First, let's go over the leader effect in case you've forgotten. I wouldn't blame you. This leader doesn't really show up too often, I must say. But you basically get to don -2 to either draw a card when your hand is 5 or less, or to give -2 cost to a character. And this has always been kind of a weak leader effect in my opinion. I mean, don -2 is a really hard cost for a mediocre card draw effect and a cost reduction, which is especially not good right now, as a lot of black cards that used to be very meta relevant removal cards, cost based removal, just aren't very good anymore into this more modern version of the game. So this leader hasn't really been able to use that very well. But this deck does something really well now using these new cards, and that is ramping. So we have the 6 cost King, and I'll cover both these cards because they both share an effect at the top that isn't their activate main or on play effect, which is that if you were to KO, either through battle or through effects, just KO in general, either of these characters, you can instead just don -1. And later in the game, that's just such a nothing cost to save your character. I mean, think about it. If you're at 10 don, you're going to be at 10 anyway. If you go down to 8, you can pretty much just get out of 2 free attacks with this character if they're trying to swing into it. So no one's going to swing at it. These bodies will just stick on the board. And that's especially very good for this King because it has an activate main that lets you ramp 2 Dawn. One is active and one as rested. The one is active is really nice because it lets us do some combos later in the game where we get to like use like a Dawn minus either with the Kaido or with our leader effect and then get some Dawn back even though we were at 10 and let us do some cool plays, which I'll touch on later. But it also lets us ramp like crazy. Pretty much as soon as you hit 6, your next turn, you're going to be at 10 because this is going to take you to 8 on the turn you play it. And then at the next turn, you're at 10 because you've got another 2 Dawn. So this deck is built around just getting to 6 immediately. And the way we do that is we use some ramp cards that let us ramp on turn 2 going first, such as this 1 cost Queen or this 3 cost It's a Die For. This card you may be familiar with if you play purple. Not a lot of other cheap ramp cards like this. That also has the potential to double ramp, but we're not really using it for that in this deck. This is just lets us ramp on 3, so we go to 4, and then our next turn we can play out a 6 cost King. But this Queen is a bit more interesting. This is also an EB04 card, because this also kind of doubles as card draw. So as you see, it lets you trash an Animal Kingdom Pirates type card from your hand to draw 2 cards, and then it has an activate main where you can rest 2 Dawn cards to ramp 1. So what this lets you do is you can like play this for 1 Dawn on your 1 Dawn turn, and then you go next turn, and then you can spend 2 Dawn to ramp, so now you're at 4, and you still have a Dawn left to use another searcher, such as this 1 cost Black Queen, or this 1 cost Event, to help you find your 6 cost King. So with all these searchers you're running, and the card draw, and the fact that we have 2 ways to ramp on going first, this is actually quite consistent. You can quite consistently see this 6 cost King going first on the turn that you want it to and get the ramp. So this deck hits 10 very consistently, very quickly as well. And once you're at 10, that's when you can start doing some cool plays. So let's get into this 9 cost Kaido. You may be like, this card is not relevant. Who's running this? This deck is running this. Hear me out. So this card has an activate main where you trash a card from your hand and you get to trash a 7 cost character on your opponent's board, and then they also trash a card from their hand. And you know, there's a lot of removal protection in the game right now. Like, for example, this doesn't hit the 6 cost Anels that Purple Anel runs. And you know, Purple Anel, if you're playing the game right now, you may be aware this is public enemy number 1. This card is insane. It's pretty much an unremovable 10k. Very strong. This doesn't hit that, obviously. But there's another meta deck that you may realize actually relies on a very powerful 7 cost. And that is Lucy. So if I pull up that card real quick, the 7 cost Sabo. Here we are. If you fought against this leader, you know that he very consistently finds most of these, and he'll just start chaining these 7 cost blockers that are activating very powerful events. But this actually hits this, and the only removal protection this deck runs is this Leo, which only protects 7,000 power or less cards. So you're pretty much always able to get this. And because you can ramp, you can pretty much always have a 9-cost Kaido ready when the opponent Lucy is going to play their Sabo blocker. This is also aided by our 7-cost Kaido, which lets us rest a 7-cost on play, and then this gains Rush, so this can help you swing for lethal. This may be a more versatile card, but it also specifically helps you get around this card. So, in my testing, this deck has a pretty decent matchup into Lucy. I don't know if I would say it's winning, but like, it competes, and that's kind of insane because this leader is just frankly nowhere near as good as this leader in general, but it has a really good matchup in my opinion. But what's also cool is that in tandem with the 6-cost king, playing your late game cards give you these cool little combos that you can do. So for example, let's say you play the 9-cost Kaido on your 10 Dawn turn, right? So you're at 1 Dawn, right? And you use this effect, you trash their blocker, right? And you went down because this card, you trash a card from your hand. So that helps you hit the 5 cards or less condition for your card draw. So let's say that you were at 7 cards when you played this. So you play this, now you're at 6, and then you use this effect. So you go down to 5 because you have to trash another card. And now that you're at 5, you can use your leader effect, go down to 8 Dawn total on the board. You still have 1 active, and then you draw a card. And then you can use the 6-cost king event to gain those 2 Dawns that you just put back in your Dawn deck from your leader effect as 1 active, 1 rested, and now you have 2 Dawn. And you can either do some searches, keep Dawn up for this powerful 4K event that you're running, or play out this 2-cost blocker. I was kind of looking when I was building this deck because, you know, I had this kind of engine figured out of like, okay, you run these searchers, and then you run this ramp, and then you run these cards, and then you just run searchable 2Ks in the Black Maria and the Who's Who. But I'm like, okay, I need some like 2-cost cards to play, or 4-cost cards, which I'll get to later, why we need 4-cost cards in this deck. And I was like, playing out this blocker is really nice actually, because due to your leader effect, you getting your card draw when you're only at 5 cards or less, this deck doesn't do particularly well at sitting at a very high hand size and just surviving that way. So playing out these little blockers and keeping Dawn up for your 4K events is honestly a really good way to help you survive in the late game and just get a few extra turns so you can run them over with your rushers or your removal bodies, or just playing out these bodies, which are very hard to remove, and just kind of winning via tempo. But anyway, so that's why you need 2-cost. I think this blocker fills that, but I'm still kind of looking if there's other 2-cost options that fit into like this turn, but I do think this is the card I like the most out of what I've played. And let's talk about this Kaido. So the ideal turn when you play this out is you play this. So let's say you play this out on 10 after you've played out your 6-cost king. You can Dawn -2, and you have 3 Dawn left, and you can immediately just use the king effect to go back up to 10 Dawn, and then you gain an active Dawn. So now you're at 4 active Dawn, 6 rested Dawn. And then, you know, you're at 10. You can use your leader effect again if it helps you get card draw, or for whatever reason, maybe you could do it. No, you're not able to use the cost reduction to aid this card because you have to play out this card first, so never mind. But point is, you'll have 4 Dawn after you play this, and that's why I'm running this card. Funny enough, there's not really that many good 4 costs that I could see that like work into this, or at the very least, there's cards that are good like in this play. There's actually a lot of card draw options in purple for 4 cost. I like this card because it's also a blocker. It lets you trash a brick from your hand and then get the draw 2. This card's pretty strong, I think, but just running it as a 2 of because I've been kind of trying out other 4 costs. And then you may have been eyeballing this card. I'm going to get to this card. This is theoretically a card that you can play out in this situation I've described where you play out the 7-cost Kaido on 10, but it's not the strongest. The reason I'm running this is because everything I've said is going first, right? This deck definitely wants to go first so you can get that 1 ramp and then play your 6-cost king early, then taking you to 10. And effectively, you're trying to go for this play where you can consistently triple ramp going first. But going second, there's not a way to hit 6 Dawn any faster than just, you know, hitting 6 Dawn naturally on your 3rd turn. So you can play, you may be thinking like, oh, if you need a 4-cost card, why aren't you running the Mr. Tube on clay? This is a staple purple ramp card. Pretty much, it is not coming up. But if you don't know what this card does, just ramps an active Dawn. Has a pretty strong effect that's like a body on the board where it copies the power. So this is staple purple card, 1k counter, it's great. But it just isn't really helping what we're doing in this deck, I've realized. Because if you play this out on your 4 Dawn turn, so you go up to 5, you have 1 active, it doesn't really help you do anything because you get another Searcher. And then you go to 7 next turn, and ideally you just want to play this out as soon as possible. So it's like if you already have this, you're playing it out at 6 or 7 anyway. It doesn't really matter that you got that extra Dawn, because as soon as you play this, you're at 10 next turn. So that extra Dawn doesn't even help that much. So I just needed like a good on-curve, generic 4-cost card. And that's where I was kind of struggling to find cards that fit into this deck that are like good on your second turn going first, but are also good in the late game. And this card doesn't really fit the late game, but it is a 2k counter. It's not searchable, but it is a 2k. It's hand rip. The cost reduction can sometimes come into play with some of your cards later in the game. And I like it. I think it's a good on-curve play, and it fits because even, hey, if you're not going second, at least you have this 2k in your hand. So I like this card a lot, but I'm open to suggestions because I'm still kind of trying to find out what other 4-cost cards work in this deck. And then last but not least, you may notice this Brook. You're like, why are you running this? This card isn't good anymore. You may know if you were playing this game way back in like OP7, OP8, the Rob Lucci era, you may be very familiar with this card. The Rebecca, Brook, whatever else it was combo. But I'm running this because there's actually a lot of 1-costs in the meta. So even if you don't get a lot of cost reduction, like if you're not even using your leader effect, this is killing a 1-cost every turn that it's attacking and on play. And you may know Purple NL likes to play 1-costs, Red Blue Lucy likes to play 1-costs, and I'm like, you know what, this helps you get around those cheeky Rebecca Searcher blockers. That card is very, very annoying. This just gets it off the board immediately, is very nice. And it'll keep removing their little Searcher blockers if they don't deal with it, so it forces a swing. And in that matchup, I find it working. Not really super useful into Purple NL, honestly, because he just plays out so many of those bodies for free anyway. And it's not like it's not like having multiple of those bodies on the board really accumulate value. He just needs one, so he can kind of ignore this for the most part. But it helps a little bit in the Red Blue Lucy matchup, and every now and then if it's on the board, it's established, you can combine it with your leader effect and like a Perona, and you can get some combo removal play. But that's kind of niche and doesn't really come up. But I think this card's solid. Definitely the most replaceable card in this list. I guess that and maybe this 4-cost Nami. But that's pretty much the deck list. And we're going to look over some games, and you guys are going to see this deck does pretty well, especially into Lucy. But just in general, don't underestimate this. King, I think with maybe just like a few more cards, like another card, this deck could become really good. Either I think this deck needs like some kind of 4-cost play or a better late game play, like something better to do with its ramp. And if that happens, or if someone figures out what already works into that, I think this deck has potential. So we're going to get into some games and show you that potential in action. Alright, so we have our first game against Red Blue Lucy. I'm going to show us 2 games against Lucy because I do think the strongest thing that this deck does is just beat the shit out of this deck. Because if you know, Red Blue Lucy, not the number 1 deck in the format. And I think in the past few days or weeks, people have kind of started to rank it lower in general, but like still very strong. And if you're struggling with this deck, let me tell you, this is the counter, I think. Maybe not the counter, but a counter. Anyway, we started off with a search and we were able to get our ramp. So you see we're at 4 and we have that 6-cost king in our hand. So you know what's coming down next turn. Our opponent's also off to the races with her searchers and the Cavendish, but yep, we're going to ramp and the swing 6. Our opponent did take the first hit. And, Lucy players, they think they can kind of like stack up on their blockers and just stack up on their hand size, but we're going to attack both of those things. So we're going to kind of punish this guy for playing the way he would normally play this deck, which is taking life very early because he's already at 2 life. And, we're like, hey, we can kind of run you over. You got to be careful. So we're also going to take some life and aggression, just trying to like find my late game. I'm really looking for those 9-cost Kaidos. Definitely want those in this matchup. And we did get a trigger search, which is nice, but yeah, we still haven't seen it. And we're pretty healthy. The one thing, though, is we don't really have a particularly great play coming up, and still no 9-cost Kaido, so I'm kind of scared about his next turn where he plays his blocker. But yeah, it looks like I'm going to play out this Kaido Rusher and probably try to swing into those Cavendishes. I'm debating it actually. I forgot what I do here, but I think I might actually rest that Rebecca blocker. He doesn't have a Dawn on it. It's not a blocker, but I'm like, hey, I can just rest it because I'm probably not going to get both the Cavendishes, is what I'm thinking. And I might as well just get this before it becomes a blocker later on. In retrospect, I think I should have went for both the Cavendishes. I was definitely going to get one, and even if I wasn't going to get another one, I think getting the cards out of hand would have been worth it instead of that. Especially because I have this broken hand and I don't have a play I really want to do next turn. So worst case scenario, I could play the Brook to get rid of that. Oh, I guess I can't because he does have that Leo on the board. Oh, so I'm going to play out the Brook anyway. Yeah, and start getting rid of those. Okay, and now I'm threatening to get rid of his little bodies on the board. So he can't like keep protecting them because I'm gonna, if he doesn't play out another 1 cost, I'm just gonna be able to get that Leo off the board, and then his little 1 costs aren't protected anymore. Or also his Cavendish aren't protected, but we're not trying to remove that. We don't really have any good play to do that. But yep, nope, there's the 7 cost Lucy. He's using the Fire Fist 8k leader, very scary. And he's not really going to be able to go for the removal effect on the Fire Fist, or even be able to swing into our body, but that minus 8k does last until our next turn, so that is going to kind of take it off the board for a turn in a way. So this is not looking super good for us. We don't really have a play lined up right now. We're at 1 life. He has a board. This is looking pretty bad, but we're going to do some card draw, and we do find our 9 cost Kaido. Beautiful. Very lucky. But yeah, there's a lot of card draw and searching, and you can find this stuff pretty consistently. It may seem lucky, but I mean, like, it happens more often than not. So we're going to be able to get that blocker, and we have our event in our hand, so we're feeling pretty safe right now at 1 life. He's only going to have this Cavendish on the board if he doesn't let it go, which he probably won't. Yep, so we're going to go 5 at life. Instead of going 6 and 7 at the Cavendish, I'm going 5 at life because I'm like, he doesn't want to go to 0 right now, so he's going to counter out of that for sure. I'm actually not going for the Cavendish at all. Because I'm like, yeah, he's just going to be able to get out because he has that stage. He'll trash a card, and he doesn't. There's no way he wants to go down to 0 because he doesn't think he can kill us this turn. We got the Dawn up. We have some cards. He only has 1 body. So we're swinging life just to get more cards out of hand. And I do have another 7 cost Kaido, so I think what I'm thinking is like, I'm low. I don't think I'm going to survive more. We're going to play this a bit faster. He's going to play this blocker. This is just getting rested next turn. That 7 cost Sabo is gone next turn, guys. And we're probably just going to be able to run him over. I mean, he only has... Oh, he is drawing with the Cavendish. He's going to keep some Dawn up. So maybe we don't go for lethal here. But kind of depends. I mean, I don't know. He is going to swing 8 at life. He's not going to go 9, so we are just going to get out instead of taking it. So maybe we don't have to go for game, but that's probably the play here. I'm not so sure we can survive another turn. You know, this deck... I wouldn't describe it as like aggro, but it's kind of fast for sure. Oh, and I didn't even mention it, but he kind of fumbled playing that Rebecca without dealing with the Brook because we just took care of it for free right there. I put a Dawn on the Brook just to get a card out of his hand while doing that, instead of just doing it for free and not getting any cards out. It's worth it to spend the Dawn there, I think, to make the attack 5k. And now that he doesn't have that, because I wasn't even thinking about that, he didn't notice it either. I didn't notice it in retrospect. But yep, nope, we're swinging 9. We have another 8 and a 9 coming right here. I'm thinking about his cards because I'm like, oh, maybe I go for the board, but nah, we just go for it here. So yeah, I should just put all Dawn and go for it. I think he hasn't used the stage as well. I must have been counting it right now, but yeah, I don't think he can get out of this, or if he can, it'd be very lucky. Yeah, like if this was a 1k, but it was a brick. He didn't have it. So that actually was a pretty close game. He did have a lot of counter at the end there, but nope, he had 1 brick in his hand, and that was all it took. So that was kind of scary, kind of a close game, but I think the deck showed what it did well. We were removing his blockers, we were resting his stuff, clearing his board, and also playing fast at the same time, being able to just kind of run him down, run down his cards throughout the game. Not a lot of decks can do that into Lucy, but believe it or not, Purple Black King can. So we're going to go to another game, show you more of this action against this Lucy deck. Alright, here is our second game against Lucy. So here I do have 2 searchers. I don't have... Oh, well, I have 1 searcher and then the card draw. But then the card draw queen is the ramp. So I'm like, okay, I just need to see my 6 cost king. I searched it up. Great. So now next turn we're just going to play out our ramp and also draw some more cards at the same time. And we're off to the races at that point. I'm thinking about doing this here because I'm like, oh, it's a brick in my hand. But here's another benefit of the 9 cost Kaido. is it does let us trash any card from our hand for its effect. So it kind of repurposes those ramp cards for later in the game, so they're not just breaking us the whole time. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to play that. I actually didn't see what I got rid of. I got rid of my blocker, my little blocker, because I didn't want to get rid of the 7 cost, because I'm like, I'm going to need that in this matchup in particular. So I got rid of the 1k blocker, ramped, and then next turn we're going to play out the 6 cost king. And this time, this game, guys, look at our hand. We are prepared for the grind. We are prepared for those 7 cost Sabo blockers. We have the late game that we need, let me say. Because that's 2 turns we're just going to be able to play his 9k body, rip a card from his hand, and kill his blocker play from last turn. I mean, you're going to see what happens in this game, guys. But our opponent's also seeing everything he needs. You guys know Lucy, super consistent deck. So many searchers, so much card draw. He's pretty much going to see that Cavendish and those Sabo blockers every game. So this actually looks like quite a similar start to the last game we played. Because the turns on this deck's earlier turns, Lucy, are a little bit more homogenous due to how it's just that consistent. Yeah, I'm looking about that. The Leo's not going to come up. We don't even have a Brook in our hand. And it does not protect the 7 cost Sabo blocker, which is all we care about removing. Now, this this guy is playing out all of these blockers. If I remember correctly, I think he plays out all 4 of them. Yeah. If we had a Brook, we could kind of go a bit crazy. But now we're already at 10. We're just going to start playing out our late game, probably. We're going to save those 9 cost Kaidos for the big blockers, though. But yeah, probably playing out a Rush Kaido here. Another thing that's nice is, if you play your Searchers, you saw me do it last game, but yeah, even in a situation like this where it's like, I don't really have any good rest targets, you can just rest the blocker, swing into it with your 1k. If they give you a card for it, I mean, like, hey, that's on them. So, yep, gonna do this play. Just swing right into that. I mean, he could give me a 2k here, but he should probably just take it. He is going to give us a 2k. Yeah, I do not agree with that play, because now it's going to be a little bit harder for him to defend this Cavendish. I think he still has it, though. He has this blocker. He has a lot of cards in hand. Oh, but he's going to use the blocker, so now it's just, yeah, we go 10. He's probably not going to defend this. Or he could, but then, he has another 8k coming his way after that. And it's like, yeah, you just have to give up a ton of cards. So yeah, he's not going to do that. Now that we got this Cavendish out of the way, we're just going to swing 7 life. Oh, no, we're actually going for the blocker here. I think that's fair, because he's just going to start playing out more blockers now, and it's like, yeah, it's good to get those out instead of just giving him cards, because he'd probably take that 7k hit, honestly. Alright, finishing our turn with some searching. And now, he's likely going to play 7 cost Sabo. Yep, there it is. But if you look at our hand, we have a amazing answer to that card in our hand with the beautiful 9 cost Kaido. Shout out to that card. You're going to watch that in action. We have 3 of them in our hands. That's exactly what you want to see in this matchup. Just completely lets you answer the 7 cost Sabo blocker. Alright, so he's actually going to swing into our Kaido. And we're just going to dot -1. No big deal. No big deal at all. There's something to be said. There's nothing else he can swing with, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Kind of a misplay there. I don't think that really affected us. We pretty much get a Dawn back from our king, so we're at 10 this turn anyway. Didn't really affect us too much. Yep, we're going to play that, get rid of the blocker. And I mean, just guys, look at the board difference right now. We have 9k, 9k, 7k. We're going to be able to leader effect and ramp again this turn with the king. Get that 1 extra Dawn. Probably not going to use that for anything. But I mean, yeah, we also get to swing with the 7 cost Kaido. That's what's kind of annoying about the Fire Fist. Once again, just kind of like pauses our board rather than gets rid of it. But I mean, this next turn, it's going to be hard for him to match this tempo. I mean, especially considering the fact that we just have another 9 cost Kaido, 2 more 9 cost Kaidos. I do think, though, something you got to think about with your 9 cost Kaidos is what you're pitching for it. So right here, obviously you'd rather get rid of bricks. Typically, obviously, there's situations where that's not the case, but typically that's what you do with cards like that. But, it's like, I want to be able to keep playing these 9 cost Kaidos and match his 7 cost Sabo so that I can just make sure he doesn't get to have more than 1 at the board at any time. And here it's kind of like, okay, so it's like I have these 2, but I also have the 7 cost Rusher Kaido. And you do have to think with this deck, like you do have this really good late game into this matchup, but you can't really out attrition people super well, despite what you think. With really, like, you have to race a little bit. Maybe not in this game since we have like this many Kaidos, but like it actually would be very good for us here to like maybe in this situation, yeah, pitch our other 9-cost Kaido, try to get them as low as possible this turn while they're only going to have 5 cards in their hand after we do this play, because remember the 9-cost Kaido also makes them trash a card from their hand. We just swing at them, they have the 2 blockers, and we just hopefully get to go for a game another turn. We're not going to do that though, we are going to get rid of the Rusher Kaido. I am realizing in this situation that like, okay, he has these other Rebecca blockers that are probably going to sit on the board for a little bit, and I have another 9-cost Kaido. He's probably not going to be able to get back into this. I have 3 life. I'm feeling very safe, so I don't even need to do the play I'm saying, but it's something you got to think about. Sometimes you want to play a little bit faster than you typically would with this deck, despite the fact that it may seem like more of a control deck on the surface. But anyway, he's just going to play out another blocker, but it's pretty much over at this point. You know, Red Blue Lucy's endgame ideal state is, you know, to have a board full of blockers and a huge hand size, but they don't have a hand size. We have ways to get around their blockers. It's just over here. So he's going to, yeah. Very futile effort to get rid of our board there, but he's going to do it anyway. And yep, we're probably just going to play out another 9-cost Kaido. In this situation, with the way it turned out, actually, it would have been better to have the 7-cost Kaido to just go for game here. We'd have had more Dawn, but we won the game anyway. And just another complete demolition of a Red Blue Lucy player with this unexpectedly good matchup. So we had 2 games of that. This game, you definitely saw more of the 9-cost Kaido in action. Just lets you chain these 9k bodies, completely demolishing their tempo. And it's just great stuff. It's just great stuff. But let's move on to a match that is not against Lucy and see how this deck does into other matchups. Alright, so for our last game, we are up against Red Black Sabo. Not the most meta-prevalent deck, unlike Red Blue Lucy, but something worth thinking about because, you know, in this matchup, he plays a lot of 8-cost characters, and all of our stuff typically interacts with 7-cost characters, so we need to use our leader effect or something like a Brook or a Perona in order to actually gain value off of our Kaidos. So this is kind of a matchup where it's a bit harder to get value off of your late game, so we're going to see how we play into that. We got a great start, though, with some ramp and our 6-cost king, and we're off to the races. But so is our opponent here. He's already activated his leader effect by being at a low enough life where he's no longer minus 1k. He has his blockers on board. He's probably going to play out another one. Yep. And this is, you know, this is what Red Black Sabo does. Spams his little blockers that also happen to be 8 costs. It's very strong because, yeah, we're approaching our 10 Dawn turn here, and we're not going to be able to easily get rid of it here. You know, we have low card size. We would much rather use our leader effect to draw a card than to give minus cost to something, but I'm like, I got to get value off this 9-cost Kaido, so I'm going to use my leader effect. I'm going to reduce the cost of, yeah, probably that blocker. Yep. And we're unfortunately going to have to trash a card going out to 3. Not getting another card draw is very sad here, but we got to get a blocker off the board. And our board is looking pretty good here. We are going to swing 6 and then swing 8, it looks like. He might take this. Get the Dawn up. Okay, he goes for an event. Interesting. All right. And, you know, we have a 9k. We have our 7k king. We have this Kaido coming in, which is, once again, it's going to be hard. That rest is 7 cost. We're not really going to be able to rest his blockers. I really need card draw. I don't expect myself to do another play like last turn here. I'll probably play with the 7-cost Kaido just as a rusher. That's the thing, you know, if you can't get a rest with this card, it's still a 7-cost 9k rusher. Like, it's a very solid card, even without that. So, you know, definitely don't underestimate that 7-cost Kaido. Yeah, so I'm pretty much just resting the Searcher. Little unfortunate interaction there. The Searcher is buffed by 1k because of his leader effect, so we don't even get to swing into it for free with our Searcher. But that's pretty insignificant. That's not going to make a difference on the game. And yeah, we are making a dent in his hand size now and slowly taking back that advantage. I mean, all it took was just like taking 1 life hit and then 1 use of leader effect, and we actually have the hand size advantage and the board advantage, and we're going to be even on life probably after this turn, unless he takes this next hit. He'll probably just... Okay, he had the one... And I forget Red Black Sabo has that 4k event, so yeah, definitely think about that in that matchup. Kind of like a ground death situation, except a little bit different. I actually don't remember exactly what the condition it is for it to be 4k, but yeah, he does have that. Alright. I mean, like, the 9-cost Stussy, that's a spicy black tech option there. I haven't seen that card in a little bit. It's going to even out the board size a little bit, but we have still a very threatening board. We have another rusher, and yeah, I've realized at this point I'm just like, you know what? He has low enough hand size. We just gotta race him at this point. You know, we're not gonna win a battle of attrition against this deck. We just gotta go for it, right? And he obviously, that's what's kind of great about this deck is when you get in the situation where you're gonna start racing, you force your opponent to do that as well because they can't really deal with this board of your, because if they try to swing into your board instead of your life, you just get to Dawn -1. So, you kind of force your opponent into a racing situation, which he's going to do. He's going to put it down to 0. Thank God we played out that blocker, though, because we live against that dragon. Very scary. Make sure you play around dragon, guys. That card is a threat. That can let red decks push from lethal out of nowhere sometimes. Don't see too many people running it, but yeah, you always see it in Sabo. He doesn't have a lot of hand size. We're just going to completely run him over there. And that's also another showcase of that 2-cost blocker. That comes up a lot. Having the blocker and having the 4K event really gives you that survivability you need in the late game. And you saw we were just barely able to edge it out there, survive that last turn, and then just completely run him over with our unkillable board. And that's kind of what this deck does, even in a deck that isn't Red Blue Lucy, where you're not going to perfectly be able to remove their big body plays every turn. You just run them down, and it works. But that's that. Let's get back to the deck list and give some final thoughts on these games and the deck. Something to note about those games we looked at, I don't think I was running the Onami blocker in those games. I think I was instead, imagine the deck list I was running at that time was, imagine instead of these two, you had one more Brook and one more Kaido. I kind of decided at some point while playing that these are not cards. This card's great a lot of the time, but there's just some matchups. Like, imagine Purple and L, for example. This just gets no value. I mean, this card is just completely useless in that matchup. So sometimes you don't want it, but you also do want it like a lot in like some matchups. It is a very strong card, especially into Red Blue Lucy, which is, like, I think that's the best reason there is to play this deck into this format, is it just does really good into one meta deck. And, it does pretty good into a variety of other stuff, honestly. It is a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion. But, there's an argument to be made of like, okay, should I reduce the number of discards to hurt my like only real upside as a deck in this meta so that I can have a little bit more consistency in other matchups? Or should I just go all in and be like a one-trick pony and be like, okay, I am the Red Blue Lucy counter deck, and that is my whole gimmick. I am the rogue deck that they don't know how to deal with that also happens to counter their deck. So, there's decisions to be made in the deck building process for that. But, there's also something to be said about like, yeah, just like, it's got to be consistent, man. I mean, that's really what makes decks at the end of the day is, not just being able to do strong things. Pretty much every deck, with a few exceptions, I guess. Most decks can do strong things within the game. You know what I mean? But it's like, it really comes down to how consistently you can do it sometimes. So that's just a little deck building ethos with some of your more niche cards like these two. Also, Brook is pretty niche. This is pretty important to this deck. It just happens to be very polarizing depending on the matchup. But I kind of said it before, but let me remove some stuff here. But I do think that there is like a core engine of this deck, and that is, I'll even take out like these. That is these cards. This is really what I'll even take out this. This is really the core engine, I think, of this leader. I couldn't imagine building a deck without these cards. Where I already explained this whole package. Let's call this like Animal Kingdom ramp package. I don't know. You can call it whatever. This is your Animal Kingdom package, where it's just completely centered around seeing the 6-cost king and getting to 10 immediately. And I think that's something fun about this leader. Is like you have this core this very reliable core. Honestly, I do think this is a very strong core of cards to have in your leader. And then you still have, this is 33 cards out of a 50 card deck. So you still have like 17 more cards to kind of just put whatever you want. That is kind of what's unfortunate, though, is, I don't think there's just too many good generic options for what this deck's trying to do. Like, there's all kinds of, purple late game that's like pretty good, but I don't know. It just kind of doesn't work with this deck, I feel. There's room to experiment, I'd say. There's all kinds of cards. I think you really could just try to fit anything into this engine. You just really need like, I don't know, like 4 or 3-cost cards, so you have something to play going second. And also in tandem with your Kaido, the 10 Dawn turn play where you play this, Dawn -2, ramp back, and then get back to 4. You want to have something to play off of those Dawn that you get during that play. And you also want just like some better late game because, one of the strengths of ramping is you get to play big bodies earlier. So naturally, you would want to play big bodies. If the whole point of this deck is to hit 10, ideally you would want some 10 costs. There just doesn't happen to be too many good ones, I think, for what this deck is trying to do. But I really, I had a lot of fun building with this deck, and I would love to see more people explore this. I do think there's untapped potential in this leader and this package. I don't know if I've found it, but I really do believe it's there. So I implore you, if you're interested, give this deck a shot. It's really fun. I can say that at least, and especially on a deck building front, like there's just it feels like you can do a lot, but you also have like a core vision you can kind of follow. It's fun. I like decks like that where it's open ended but also focused at the same time. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. Did some pretty good on the games. I showed 3 games of us winning, but I do have to say, because I'm like, oh, this deck is like so good. Like there's a reason you don't see everyone on this deck. It's I had a lot of losses, and I gotta say, Purple NL is a nightmare, guys. Purple NL really is a nightmare. There's some tech cards, like I do think, Brook can help you in the match. There's an argument to be said of like, oh, maybe instead of like trying to ramp, you just want to get this out in that matchup. You just kind of ignore your whole like going to 10 idea, and you just want to like make sure he doesn't get to play his like 1-cost boards, and then hopefully later in the game you can just kind of like get around his 6-cost NLs by either resting them and going face, or I don't know. There's like maybe you could play some strategy like that. Another card is I'm trying to remember. It's this 2K counter. I was running the, let's see if it shows up here, the Perona as an option for like an on-curve play. You didn't see that in any of the games I played today. I'm pretty sure every game I played was going first, but going second, this can be really nice to play on 4 in a lot of matchups. But there's also an argument to be made to include this card. Let me find it. This one right here. So pretty much every time you use your leader effect, you get to kill a little body on the board. Good into Red Blue Lucy, good into Purple NL, because, those are the 2 decks that love to play little bodies. And, this can help you clear up the board, but I don't know. I was playing this card because typically you're only going to use your leader effect later in the game, so this just kind of sits on the board and doesn't get value for a bit. So I'm not a big fan of it, but it's something worth testing, but for sure. But, my point is don't get your hopes too high with this deck unless you find something that, I just kind of like didn't. Once again, I think if some kind of like untapped potential was found in this deck, it could do really good, but I don't know. I just implore people to use some creativity, use some experimentation, and try to make this leader work. I'd love to see more deck lists of Purple Black King, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Don't forget to subscribe. See you guys in the next one.